So we'll just wait for folks to join.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Being Marketers. Hope everyone is doing well as you're coming in. Glad to have you joining us. And we'll just kind of wait for a couple of minutes as people come in. And welcome. Kat is our chief of everything, essentially. And she's going to be looking out for you today as our audience ambassador.
You bet. And you'll see in the chat, I already posted some things we'd love for you to do as you're popping in. Tell us how you're feeling today in 2 words, and tell us where you're coming from, where you're joining us from. Welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, Tony from Houston, Texas.
Hi, Tony.
We have another Houston, Kristen from Houston.
Very cool. My place of, I called it home for 18 years.
We have an Austin, Texas joining us too. Let's see.
Even have my Austin, Texas, not Austin, the Texans mask. So my face masks have the logo of the Texans.
Cool.
Which hopefully, yeah, go ahead.
Sumner, Washington. She's tired and feeling tired and busy today.
we block those feelings. Those are the default feelings for us. I think that sums up the webinar. we need to go no further. I think she nailed it.
Austin, Suzanne from Austin joining us. Welcome.
And we always love to do, if you're new to Root and River, we always do a 2-word check-in. It's one of our standards. I mean, we always want to know how people are feeling, and we love to do those when we're live. When we're in person, we often will write them up on a big whiteboard and have everybody's words. There's something powerful about that. So,
so let's just wait.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Suzanne's feeling inspired and hopeful. I think those are.
There you go. That's a good feeling.
Caffeinated and cozy. Oh my gosh, Michael, I love it.
Caffeinated and cozy. Nice.
That'd be a good name for a podcast right there. Oh. Hi, Brooke. Good to see you pop up. So many good familiar names. Hi, Kim, Michael, Suzanne. Yeah. Suzanne is the proprietor of the Brentwood Social House, which is right across the street from my house.
Oh, nice. Is it back to being social or not yet?
Still curbside social. But I don't think, yeah, that's from there. What's left of it. So.
All of my regular restaurants survived thus far, so I'm hoping that they can pull through.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been very adamant about going out even during the quarantine to get food from restaurants just to make sure that we do our part.
Same.
Absolutely.
And plus our cooking sucks. So.
I find myself completely out of energy by the end of the day. Luckily, my husband.
Which will benefit.
Yeah. So good to do. All right.
Let's roll.
Do it. About 5 after. Let's get started. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. This is our Being Marketers webcast. It's brought to you by Root and River and the team here that we'll start off with introductions of the Root and River team. So hi, I'm Emily. I am the co-founder of Root and River and coming to you from Arizona, from Scottsdale, Arizona today.
I'm Justin Foster, co-founder, coming to you from Austin, Texas.
I'm Jen Lawhead. I'm Chief of Story for Root and River and also from Arizona, Phoenix area.
Chief of Story, I want that title.
Hi, I'm Kat Weiss. I'm Chief of Staff for Root and River, and I'm coming to you from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Before we introduce Saar officially, we wanted to share a little bit with you about why we're doing this, why we've launched this community called Being Marketers, why we're putting some muscle and heft behind this. And then we'll introduce Saar.
Yeah, So we believe, as you know, that every great brand is a spiritual experience. So most of the people, a lot of the people who are doing branding every day are marketers, right? And in marketing, there's so much going on that it's so easy to get pulled in a million different directions and to really put the doing over the being. And it is our intention with being marketers to hold this space of being for directors of marketing, whether or not you're the head of your company or you are a marketing director in another company or a CMO somewhere. Being marketers is all really about holding space for the beings who are doing all of this work and understanding what their everyday looks like, where they draw inspiration from, how they manage all the multiple hats that they have to wear and roles that they have to play inside of the organization. And that's really what being marketers is really all about. It's about giving you this time and space to consider who you are, where you're at, where you find inspiration, and how to get better at all of those things. Mm-hmm. So we're really delighted you joined us today.
Yes, and we say this to our clients all the time, is that businesses don't buy anything, people do. Well, the same rule applies, is businesses don't market, some human does. And so when we started thinking about innovative CMOs that we knew, Saar was really the first one that came to mind. And so we're excited to have you, Saar. We're going to give you a formal introduction here, and then we'll just dive in. So Saar is the Chief Marketing Officer for BMC Software. He's been a marketing and engineering executive who spent his entire career developing and promoting software solutions that enhance performance and availability of tech-driven businesses. Part of what makes Saar interesting, in addition to that, he's a former officer in the Israeli Air Force for 6 years, where he worked on airborne avionics and fighter jet software. And he lives here in Austin, but is spent, I think, 16, 18 years in the Houston area as well. So welcome, Saar.
Thank you. It's always embarrassing hearing somebody else introduce you. It's just like, is this me, the person they're talking about? It's a pleasure being here, guys. I mean, your work and what you represent is a beacon, not just for marketeers, but for businesses. And I couldn't be happier that you chose me as your first contender.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. We want to dive right in, and how we'll do this, we're gonna pepper Saar with some questions. For the rest of our audience, please feel free to add follow-up questions in the chat. Kat is going to be looking out for that. We will have a dedicated Q&A time at the end, but if we see something that pops up that's super relevant, we'll mix it in there. But Justin and will begin the interrogation, I guess. We want to start first by really understanding a little bit about what your everyday as a CMO, as a marketer looks like. Tell us a little bit about what you do every day.
Every day, I almost feel like flipping that question to you, because there is no everyday for marketing. Maybe if you're doing something very specific, but for most marketeers, it's your days just differ, right? They change and sometimes very dramatically. There are no set routines in marketing, and especially now, it's all packed with virtual meetings like this one. There's a lot going on from a sense of needing to react, specifically in the times we live in, whether it's COVID or the injustice that we're experiencing right now and the reaction to it. You almost have to think how you're going to respond every day, and it's really hard to plan for. Which is part of the blessing. I think it fits my personality. I love it that it's that way. I would hate an office job where you come in, you got your agenda, and you kind of do the same every single day. But we do have seasons, I think, in marketing. And for us at BMC, we've got the planning season that typically happens before the fiscal year, where it's a lot about, okay, what do we want to do? What are the objectives? What does the business want? We are in the midst of our execution season, which is executing on the plans. And clearly we had to make some changes in lieu of COVID and other things as well. And then for us, we also have the events season, which again, completely changing this year. Our physical events are going to turn virtual. And so we have to kind of learn that muscle and figure out how we're going to do that in the most effective way. And every time you do something like that, you don't just want to do it. You want to think about how can you reinvent it or do it better than anybody else, right? So a lot of thought is getting into it. Innovation, I think, is a hallmark for marketing in general. We need to be ahead of the business when it comes to thinking differently and acting differently. So,
So when you look at your daily task list, are there things on your task list, things you want to get done that you generally always have energy for? Like when you look at it, you're like, oh, I can't wait to do that.
Yes, it's anything that has to do with talking to people. So I'm an extrovert, and what we're doing right now is going to give me a lot of energy for the rest of the day. Anytime I can get in front of an employee or any other stakeholder, whether it's somebody on the sales side, whether it's a customer, whether it's an analyst, and just have a conversation with that individual and kind of understand what they're trying to achieve and try to solve for it. That gives me a ton of energy. I think that the essence of what we do in marketing requires curiosity. If you're not curious, if you're not asking more questions than you're providing answers, that you're in the wrong profession. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. So that's really it for me.
So when you look at that list, if that list is actually what's going to happen that day, what is it that kind of you realize, okay, I'm gonna have to get my energy up for that meeting because that's gonna kind of take me down a notch? So a little bit of a risky question here.
It's not so much. I think it's not so much about what it is. It's how long it would take. So if you have to put me in a chair for more than an hour, I'm dying. It's just not. If I have to focus on something, on a discrete topic for more than an hour, and sometimes, I'm a part of the BMC executive leadership team. So the fortunate and unfortunate things, we have to spend time in board meetings or in many, many other management meetings that are just long because they have to be. That is draining for me. That is very, very draining for me. I get out of it. I need a drink. I need to clean my head. Yeah. And that's really tough. And one more thing, if I have to sit down and read dense materials, I have to research something that's like 20, 30 pages long, I'm going to break that thing up. I've got an attention span of a 3-year-old. So I have to make sure that I don't sit down and read too much all at once.
So you think of your career arc as a marketer, and how long have you been in the CMO role? How many?
2.5, 3 years now. Yeah, 3 years.
Is that in your career arc? Is this your first time as a CMO, like in that title?
First time as a chief marketing officer. Yeah.
Great. So, is there anything about marketing that you miss being able to do when you were not the CMO?
Oh no, because the beauty of it is when you're CMO, you can actually choose where you want to dive deeper, right? So I was joking with Jen, but the whole storytelling aspect is really a passion of mine. And I think that so many companies out there get it wrong or don't pay enough attention to it. So messaging and telling a story to me is the heart of marketing. And so I get involved there where I can, more so than in other places. And anything else that's more, I'd say, kind of operational, repetitive, I tend to stay away from. It's not my core suit. I just don't enjoy it. So for Kat's world, I'm probably not a good fit. But again, messaging, positioning, storytelling, differentiating from a place where it's real and there's something there. I hear a lot of marketeers talk about we have to sound different. No, you have to be different. It's not about sounding different, right? And if you are different, then it's easy to distinguish yourself. And so that's really my passion. That's where I try to spend as much time as I can.
So you mentioned this earlier in one of your answers, when you're talking about planning, was like, you don't just go in to do the planning. It's how do we make this better, right? And how you're challenging your team to think that way.
How do you reinvent and not just go in and say, you know what? I had a fork in the road. I was supposed to go left. Now I'm going right. How do we make that right a broader lane? How do we make it faster and more interesting to walk down?
Yeah, I think that goes to how like you just said, how being different. It's all in those decisions that you make. So my question for you is, what kind of prompts or questions or environment do you set up for your team to really push them in that direction of being different or thinking differently about maybe even something that you're doing every year?
I ask a lot of questions, and that tends to help. when I feel like somebody's going down the wrong path, and my style is not to say, no, you're wrong about that, or it's not the right path to take. I just start asking questions that potentially would help guide them to where I think it needs to go. And on occasion, I would tell people I expected a higher bar, right? This is kind of basic. We can do better. We should do better. And I think when you do something like that, it's really important to be hard on the issues, but easy on the people. It's not about failure per se. People don't fail. They tend to come up with suboptimal work at times. Criticize that. Go after the work, not the person, right? When you do that, it really becomes obvious what's the problem. The people are not the problem. It's the work. Let's go tackle the work. Let's see what we can do to make it better. And by the way, most of the time I just get out of the way, because my team has been with me for a while. They kind of know what I expect. I can tell you that 3 out of 4 times when I get something, it's hitting the mark. It's got the quality essence that I expect to see. And I don't spend a lot of time pushing people over a certain virtual line, right?
Yeah, so that kind of goes into a different bend of the questions here, which is, so to us, marketing is kind of an extension of an art. Certainly there's science behind it and data and whatnot, but the thinking that it requires is artful thinking. So how would you describe your philosophy related to marketing? How would you describe your philosophy related to marketing? How Saar sees the world as through the lens of marketing?
Well, I think that the essence of marketing, and certainly there's art to it, but the essence of it is to provide the right information to the right people at the right time. That to me is all, if you want to sum it up in one sentence.
Yeah.
And the right information is not just the dry information, but again, going back to how you tell that story. And if you want to tell a good story, you can't tell a good story without knowing the person that you're telling that story to, who they are, what are their pain points, what are their aspirations, and how can you tell a story that will be relevant to them in a visceral way, not just in a logical way, but it would somehow land in their gut. And we pressure test all the work that we do with customers, with groups. We do A/B testing. And I think that if you want to be a good marketeer, you can't settle for anything less than when you see that or hear it, it's like, wow, we got it, right? This is it. I'm getting the reaction that I need to get. Be relentless about that. Don't lie to yourself, and don't just get the job done or check the mark. I think if anybody thinks that marketing is about completing tasks, that's not really it. It's about getting to that moment where people are somehow touched by something that you have to say and connect to it in a visceral fashion.
Hear, hear.
Now, again, don't get me wrong. Underneath that, give them all the details, right?
Yep,
features,
sure.
Functions, benefits, all that stuff is important as well. But if you want to open doors and open hearts, you got to tell a good story.
So how do you encourage your team to stay focused on that? Because I know it's so easy to just get sort of wrapped up in the world that you live in, right? And we have to, it's difficult sometimes to go into the world of the audience. So any strategies that you have to kind of elicit that?
Yeah, again, I'm more involved in asking to see those things before they leave the door. And they get a call. If I think that we rushed into something, that it's not where it needs to be, where I'm having more of an issue, and it happens in every matrix organization. We in tech, and I think in other businesses as well, you have product marketing folks that are really kind of focused on a single product or a single solution. And then you've got what we call central marketing or corporate marketing, where all the execution happens. And so product marketing right now is sitting with the product groups. And so there's less direct influence that I have on that group, but we do have conversations on an ongoing basis. I do get involved, and if something doesn't add up, they hear from me. I think you just set the expectation, Emily, that's what you want to see, and You can't settle for anything less than that. And it's difficult, I think, for tech companies which do have solutions that are highly technical, that are designed for technical people. But guess what? Technical people are still people. They can be inspired.
Yeah.
We've seen that struggle working with software companies at first, or highly technical companies, and but once they get it, as you're saying, once that moment hits them, those words hit them in the gut, they realize that they can do everything else, explain all the features afterwards, and that's powerful to take that in and then run with it.
And the other piece that you have to pay attention to, you have to guide your teams to not to think about necessarily the products that they sell, but what would those products do for their customers and how would they serve their customers if you're in the B2B space.
Right.
So if you're selling a help desk solution or you're selling a monitoring solution, how would they use it, for instance, to maintain their business? For a bank, what does that mean? That their computers are up and running 24/7. Mm-hmm. How quickly can they adapt for their customers, right? So you got to think in a sense of what would your buyer do with your solutions and how would they inspire their customers to do business with them? I think there's a value chain that you have to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been at this a long time. I've been a CMO, much smaller companies, but I've been a CMO a couple times, and I was the CMO of a software company for a while, and then also had some interactions with some very large companies and their tech companies and their marketing infrastructure or apparatus. And there's two things I noticed that were sort of like almost like blind spots. One was where the product team or the dev team would work on their stuff and bring it to the marketing department and go, here, now market this. And so when I was the CMO of a software company, we basically insisted that marketing had to be in the early design, at least to have a voice in it, to have some input. I used to say we needed to put our DNA in it, like, so that it's got some connection to our reality. The second one is I noticed it goes the other, that marketers generally don't pretend like they know tech or dev, but a lot of dev guys think they know marketing. And so there's this interesting, like, oh, I think I know what you do. You don't understand what I do. And there's this sort of like imbalance. And so what are your thoughts on that? Does that resonate with you?
Resonates 100%. I think on the first one, we call it the conveyor belt approach. Something fell off the conveyor belt. Now go market it, right? Yeah. Got the factory, it's churning products. Here you go. Go figure that one out. And I can tell you on the curve, I think we're doing a little bit better, but we're still what I call too much factory driven at BMC, where it all starts with an idea. That idea is not necessarily vetted with customers the way it should up front. You end up with a product, you got to figure out what's the value points and who to sell it to and all that stuff. And it's happening more at the end. And I agree with you 100%. I think that solid businesses that want to be successful with their innovation have to work the other way around, or at least have to have some marketing input up front. And the second point was, again?
Just the second one was that marketers generally don't, I've noticed, don't like
yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so yeah. Everybody has a marketing job in your company, right? That's the general sense. And I can tell you that I get at least 3 or 4 emails every day, if not more. I think we should do this. Doesn't matter what your job is. With by the way, all good intended, right? Great intentions. They see something. Some of those ideas are actually useful, and you see where they fit. And you're able to execute. Many others are reactionary. I think one area where you tend to see more of that coming is they tell you, oh, this competitor, we should say so-and-so about them. We should go after them, right? We should be aggressive. You typically get that from sales. Let's be aggressive. Let's go and say so-and-so about competitor X and Y. And when you explain that the best way to approach your market is with a value that you bring and not discounting what somebody else is doing and frankly putting a subjective lens on it, they think you're weak. And it's not hitting and jiving with them. Again, salespeople are usually type A's, predators. They're like, let's go and conquer the world. But yeah, I think it's like that with every company. You have to deal with it. You have to be patient. You have to respond back and explain and be transparent about what you're doing or not doing and why and where it fits. And the worst thing you can do is to completely ignore it, I think. The other thing that to know about marketing, and you guys know it, is we serve a very, very broad ecosystem. So it's not just the customers or the prospects. You've got employees, all departments engaged with marketing, all the way up to the CEO. You've got the press, you're dealing with competitive forces. And so respect is a word I like in the context of marketing. You have to respect everybody. You have to address everything that comes up. Don't show or give people the impression you're hiding something or that you're reluctant to give them a response. It's okay to tell people no. And here's why I'm telling you that I won't do it. But don't just ignore it.
Yeah, that's wise.
We've got a great question in the chat if you're ready for it. It's from Tony. How do you encourage colleagues that are not natural storytellers to express passion? It doesn't come easily for everyone. So just because you have a powerful story from marketing, how do you ensure it's told powerfully?
Well, that's a great question. Oddly enough, guys, everybody's got a passion for something. And some people naturally are passionate about their families. Some people have a hobby that they're passionate about. I'm a motorcycle rider. I love everything about it. So I'm also passionate about that. And one technique that you use is you try to connect to that side of them and take that emotion that's being generated when they talk about their kids or talk about their hobbies and try to have it apply towards business and towards things that they need to sell, things that they need to market. Somebody smarter than me said one time that selling is an art of moving your passion from yourself to your buyer, right? You transfer the passion. And by the way, not every marketing function or role needs to show passion. There are very important roles in marketing that are more operational in nature, more process-oriented in nature, critical to the process of marketing, but not every marketeer, I think, is required to have the same amount of passion for what they do. So, but that's one way of helping people kind of extract it. And if somebody's not passionate about anything, I don't know what you do. It's hopefully there are not too many people out there like that. It's not a way to live.
That's a good tip, though. That's a really good tip, just to try to crack into that emotional space that they have for something else maybe in their lives. Yeah, redirect it. I have another question on storytelling that came to me as you were speaking. You mentioned earlier that you think a lot of brands get it wrong, just get storytelling wrong. So can you say, like, maybe give us an example of how people kind of get it wrong?
I'm not going to get into specifics again. I'm a big believer in uplifting and not going after specifics. But I encourage people to just go out there and Google or look at companies' vision statements or mission statements. It really all starts there for me. It's what drives them, or at least what CEOs put out there as the prerogative of the company, as the heartbeat. Go out there and choose the brands that you know, whether ones that you think are doing a good job or not, and you're going to be shocked how many mission statements and vision statements only talk about value to shareholders. That's kind of the story that they tell. And we exist to maximize our shares and increase the value to our shareholders. That is so uninspiring to me. And by the way, having that kind of a mission statement doesn't mean the company fails. But I think it's going to have a hard time inspiring people to go above and beyond. I think it's probably not maximizing its potential. And I think storytelling needs to start at that level of the mission and vision statement. And again, I encourage folks to go out and Google and look at some of those things. And I was shocked when I did this exercise, and every now and then I do it. It's not getting any better, unfortunately.
Yeah, interesting. So you've had a very interesting career arc. You know, with 6 years in the Israeli Air Force as an officer. As you think about what you're doing now as a leader and as a CMO, what are some things that being an officer in the Air Force taught you about where you're at today? Where are some things you're still using from that time you spent in the Israeli Air Force?
Wow, thank you, Justin. There's a ton of things. I'll just touch on a few. I think it shaped to a large degree who I am today. Probably the bigger one is the notion of no plan survives first contact with the enemy. You can sit there and plan all you want. The marketplace is dynamic, and you look at your KPIs, you look at your plan, you're fascinated and impressed by launching to market something that's going to rock the boat and it flops, or you get a reaction that you didn't expect, right? So you have to have that mindset of maybe some scenario planning, but allow for and build a culture of being able to think quickly and make rapid changes as you go to market, as you start spending money, as you launch marketing programs. Nothing would ever go as good as you plan it to be. And by the way, most things are not as bad as you think that they are, under the same notion, right? So if you think something failed, it's likely not the end of the world. Think about how to recover from it. In many cases, and in many instances, the market has a short memory, right? The other thing is the devil is in the details. When you deal with complex machines, such as F-15s and F-16s, you have to think about everything. And you can't leave any loose ends or say, you know what, this is something that I'm not going to worry about right now because it's not a problem at the moment. Because typically the small things that you leave, those loose ends, come back to bite you big time afterwards. And so never come with a partial plan, never come showing that you're not prepared. Prepare for meetings, prepare for campaigns, just be prepared, right? Sounds basic, but again, when you're working for a system like that, it becomes really critical for planes to stay up in the sky. And I think in business, it's kind of the same thing. The next thing is learning that you can't really do it all on your own. You depend on other people. Certainly when you're in any kind of military environment, people having your back, meaning you stay alive. And in business, it's kind of the same thing, maybe not as extreme, but if you want to be successful, you have to learn to rely and lean on other people for your success. The private standing next to you is going to be tomorrow's general. So always treat people with respect, no matter what. Always listen. I think listening is, a lot of executives don't do that well enough. So listening is really important. And the last thing I'll point out is decision-making. Never not decide is my motto. You got to make a decision. If you just say, I'm going to leave it the way it is, at least make it a decision to leave it the way it is and say, I'm consciously choosing option A versus option B. I think that lack of decision-making can really hurt a company, can hurt you when you're in the military. It sends a message of ambiguity, which is really bad. And ambiguity is bad in business too. So
yeah, we have a client that is, he's a consultant now, but he was a combat engineer. He was a major in the Army. And one of the standards that we uncovered in our work with him, he just really resonated with me, which is every decision has an owner. And I love this, like you just really affirm that idea that that's just why I often say when there's a branding failure, it's really a leadership failure. It's not some sort of system failure. It's not like you put Marketo in wrong or your website necessarily crashed. It's usually a leadership decision that led it to like, and I'll be specific here, like the ads that you see with Liberty Mutual and the Limu, like that had to go through so many different phases to go where somebody was like, yeah, this is good. Let's go with this. And yes, I'm criticizing another brand's marketing, but that's an example that has an owner that somebody said, sure, let's do this.
They were really trying to be different.
Yeah, what's that, Em?
They were really trying to be different.
Yes, right. Yeah,
they were trying to be different, and it's really hard in the insurance space. But as I kind of noted before, you got to be different before you can say that you're different or claim that you're different. I think for them, the one thing that I do kind of stuck in my brain, take the bird away or not, is I think that they have a slogan of only pay for what you need, right? So from that note, and Geico, save 15%, take 15 minutes, save 15%. We see those ads all the time. So those brands ultimately want you to take something away, whether they use a bird or not. And at least with me, it kind of stuck. On the more positive side, by the way, I was really inspired by the Uber ads. So Uber, I think it was Uber during the early days of the pandemic, where they showed those images of people quarantined, and they ended up by saying, "Thank you for not riding with us," or something along those lines. And I thought that was really brave and clever to say, you know what, guys, we're worried about our safety just as much as you worry about yours. Thank you for not doing business with us. There'll be a better time to do that down the road. So.
Now that kind of plays into my next question, which you said earlier, ambiguity is bad in the military, ambiguity is bad in business. And I think this is a time where there is a lot of ambiguity, and there's a lot of brands and businesses that are unsure of how to enter into this space of ambiguity. Where is their voice in that, and what is their role? So any thoughts on that, and specifically in the time of pandemic, social upheaval,
Yeah, and maybe I'll say a little bit differently. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty. To me, ambiguity is lack of being decisive on what path you want to take. And uncertainty can lead to ambiguity, but brands that have been in market for more than 5 minutes have their way. Now, there are very difficult areas right now. I just heard today on the news that AMC, the movie theater network, is closing. They're going out of business. What do you do when you can't get people to come and be a part of your business? There's really, if your entire business model is built on putting butts in seats, or even the events industry, that's really tough. If you're unable to quickly pivot and serve the same quality movies to people at home somehow, when you're competing with Netflix, you've done nothing to catch up over the years. That's a really big challenge that it's hard to fathom how they can really snap out of it, right? But if you are not in a situation where your business is shattered and all of it got taken away because you can't have people physically visiting your business, then your core beliefs shouldn't have changed with the pandemic. They should have remained intact. And if you had strong conviction about who you are as a company and what you do for your customers, that's going to come back. You just have to think about, how do you serve that same message in a remote environment or in ways that you were not used to doing before, right? So I think the uncertainty that leads to ambiguity, businesses even have to be more decisive now and pick a path and stick to it and fail fast and move quickly to try to close those gaps. The good news is that we're experiencing a big health crisis that in turn turned into an economical crisis. But the foundation of our economy before this crisis, the foundation was solid. And yes, it's probably going to take longer than what people initially thought to get back to normal, whatever that ends up being. But to me, there's a huge opportunity right now to reinforce it with buyers and with consumers, and start connecting back with them.
That's awesome. Absolutely. I think core beliefs are more important than ever, just like you're saying, and they will stay with us all and rise. Thank you.
Yeah. As a leader, then, so these are more about the C in CMO rather than the M. As a leader, what's sort of your attention hierarchy? Like, what are you paying attention to related to your team, to the humans in your team what's your attention hierarchy? What are you focusing on?
I think, and I know this is going to sound horrible, but for many of us in business, this pandemic is really also a gift, not just a curse. And the reason I say that is it allowed us to maybe move away from the myopic focus on results and scale it back and focus back on people. And it allowed me as an individual, as a manager, as a human being to call people I haven't talked to in a while and just have a conversation that started and ended with, how are you doing? And what's going on? And hear things that I either didn't listen to before or just didn't have the capacity or time to absorb. And a human fabric across our team, I wouldn't even call it hierarchy because it's not really hierarchical. It's just encouraging everybody to talk to everybody as much as possible. I think that the situation that we have working from home, and you guys know it as well, it created a situation where working hours are longer, not necessarily shorter, right? It created a situation where there's great disruption, where people have to deal with small children or elderly parents, or maybe their parent is sick. I can tell you that the tragedy that we've seen in parts of BMC, the majority of our employees in Spain lost a relative. So 4 out of 5 in that office lost a relative, right? And so connecting to the people, to the team, and having those conversations, and knowing that it's okay to be late, and it's okay to miss a deadline, I think is really, really important. And that be less judgmental, as I said before, be hard on the issues, easy on the people, and as much as possible, give people virtual hugs. Doing what we're doing now on a frequent basis, but not talking about work, is really important. Look, ultimately, I think in marketing, all we have is people. And I think it's true for every type of knowledge industry. If you don't have your people, you don't have your team, you don't have anything. And we got to treat them like family, because they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. Kat, were there some questions that came through?
Yes, we have a couple questions here. Saar's been making some powerful references like today's private will be tomorrow's general. Are these helpful internal references, or have you formalized or captured their principles and what you believe and how you operate?
No, definitely how we operate. Again, it goes back to the word respect. There's an old saying that I disagree with: respect is earned. No, respect is not earned. You have to assume respect. Respect is really the baseline for everything. And I'm a big believer in everybody's got a voice. Ultimately, you can't have everybody make a decision, but everybody needs to have a voice. And if we allow that kind of culture, we also create an atmosphere of safety, or an environment that where people feel safe to disagree and obey versus obey. And I can tell you that my chief of staff, who's also doing it kind of informally because we're not that big of a team, we can easily get into a yelling match. And we do. We scream at one another. And then we calm down, and everything kind of goes back to normal. And even when we scream, it doesn't get to cussing or being disrespectful, right? And you can disagree out loud. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you're not going to capture the jam if you don't allow for people to have conversations and voices. And by the way, not everyone is wired that way. So even when you've got that kind of environment, it's not a guarantee that everybody's going to give you their opinion. It's not a guarantee that people won't tell you what they think you want to hear. But I think it's on me to continue and attempting to break down the walls and the barriers, get people to talk, to collaborate, to voice their opinion, voice their objections, and offer a better way. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I've got another one from the chat. There are innate principles and talents we each have, and then there are aspirational principles and talents. How do you operate around these?
So aspirational, what was the other one?
Innate principles and talents we each have, and then there are aspirational principles and talents. How do we operate around these?
Well, again, I think those are individualized, and you can carve them out by team and culture. I think for us, it's really all about humanity, both for the teams and for our customers and prospects, kind of bringing that human element and talking to people as equals. A little bit on how it gets into the work itself. What we try to do, and we're not always successful, and I think a lot of marketeers struggle with that, is that you need to build your marketing messages almost as if that you were telling them to a 3-year-old. Certainly to your mom. I see a lot of big words used out there: agility, efficiency. Those are maybe not the biggest ones that you can see, but there are a lot of marketing messages that sound so mechanical. And I think the brains of most of our constituents are having a hard time. What do we mean by increase operational efficiency by 20%, blah, 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 blah. You got to get it down to earth and talk to people like you're talking to people, like you're having a conversation, right? I think on the aspirational side, we've got some work to do, especially where we are today at BMC. pushing harder on diversity, pushing harder on, and Justin and I just spoke about that a little while ago, both on the gender side, on the race side, on the sexual orientation side. And the one thing that kind of became clear to me, and our team is very spread. We've got presence in India and in the US and in South America and in Europe, is that diversity is really different between regions. It's not something that's globalized. And so where in the US, it's really more about gender and race and sexual orientation. In a place like India, it's really giving folks that are coming from the villages an opportunity to partake in the workforce, right? That's kind of the big mission there, and it's more around poverty. And so you got to look at it from a region by region perspective and put programs in place that would help to be more inclusive and to get more people to participate in the goodness that we do. And so there, I think you just have to be relentless and handle it, the aspirational stuff, like it's another very important thing that you do. And not something that, oh, when I've got an hour, let's talk about it, right? I'm going to do all this work and now I've got a spare hour. Let's go ahead and treat it. It has to be on the calendar. It has to be in the plan, and you have to talk about it. But we do have work to do there, but it is on the work plan.
So you were just sort of speaking to this question of what is the role of humanity in marketing. I think you've addressed a few things there, but is there anything that you would add to, you know, our whole thinking lately in particular kind of gone into hyper gear with this pandemic is about humanistic marketing, right? How can we be more human? How can we connect on a human level, on an emotional level, even more so in our everyday practices with our marketing? So yeah, anything else to add there about how we can infuse humanity?
Yes, and so, and it's hard work, but it has to be done. I think that the notion that marketing can be a way to deliver a message just in the context of somebody's role is a thing of the past. I think that you absolutely have to understand the individual in who they are, what do they have to deal with, all the way to a point where you know what they care about, you know what their affiliations are. And I'm getting into dangerous territory because a lot of that information is considered private, right? And folks don't want you to know it. But I think to be effective, you really have to know the people that that you're marketing to a point where you can easily select the best candidates, not just to buy your products, but that fit your company culture and what you stand for and who you stand for, right? Now, how you do that is really tricky, especially this day and age. I think that marketeers, the reason we're seeing things like GDPR in Europe, and it's ultimately going to happen, I think, in an even bigger fashion here in the US, is that marketeers went too far in trying to get that kind of information, and they did not respect privacy, they did not respect boundaries. So we have to get to a point where we buy back that trust so that people can self-select and say, you know what, I'm gonna put this information out there, maybe without telling you who I am and where I live, but I am a persona that's interested in X, Y, and Z, and these are my affiliations. And marketeers could go and say, yeah, there's a perfect match, almost like Tinder, where you swipe right, and ask permission from that individual to say, look, I think I really have something to offer. Do you mind telling me who you are? And can we proceed from here? So in a much, almost like courtship, right? Mm-hmm. In a much more respectful way versus following my cookies all across the websites I go to and building this 6,000 parameter profile, similarly to what we've seen in the past, right? That's absolutely the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you said that earlier, and we've chatted before on this, is that, you know, marketing is getting the right information to the right people at the right time, you know, and it's that idea. I think that's sort of the next wave.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's a lot of wrongs being done out there, not necessarily on purpose, where there's a lot of noise. People like you and I are getting hit with things we will never buy, simply because marketeers on the other side think that they know who we are, advertising agencies. And every time that happens, it's waste and it's noise, and it pushes people to be against advertising and against what otherwise would be good marketing practices.
So we teach our clients, and when we do all of our stuff, that if you want to understand humanity, if you want to connect to humanity, the humanity of your team or your audience, you have to connect to your own humanity first. I would boldly say it's impossible to connect to someone else's humanity in a healthy way if you're detached from your own. So the question I have here is, what are you doing? What are some practices you have that are investing in you, that are just for SAR, that are just for you as a leader, as a man, as a human?
Zero. In my answer, I think that certainly not enough. Look, again, and I might be a little bit different. Again, a blessing and a curse is that I'm an ELT member, so my life is not my own. I think many of us feel that way sometimes. And for me, look, I do things like the time that I have to think, really two segments. One is the Peloton. Every morning I get on it, and it's like my hour of sweating and just thinking about my day and planning ahead and clearing my mind. The other one is when I go motorcycle riding. I would sometimes on weekends just go out there, and it's the perfect meditative state for me, where I kind of get time to digest, look at ideas, look at what's happening around me, and really kind of be more planful and less reactive to things that are happening around. Right?
So it's not zero. Those are at least two things.
Yeah, but it's not. I wish I had, and I probably do have time. I have to make time to maybe find more formal ways to do it, and kind of make more time for myself. Right. I think all of us are probably in a similar situation. We don't feel we have enough of it.
Yeah. I think that's true for all executive positions, but I know that for myself when I was in that role, and certainly not as a big a company as you are the CMO of, it reminds me of when my kids were little, and it's just this constant demand of my attention and time. And so that's an interesting dynamic to try to also be a strategic and creative thinker in, because it means your nervous system is always fired. So doing things like Peloton or motorcycle riding at least is getting you back in and stabilizing your nervous system, so not everything is in react mode.
It is, but I'll tell you, I'll go back to the notion of the pandemic is a little bit of a blessing as well. I think it makes all of us appreciate the fact that we have a reason to wake up in the morning and have this job and have this challenge, and we're not unfortunate, either sick or in a situation where we lost our jobs or our companies are not doing very well. I think it really makes you appreciate what you have and complain less about it and think about it in a more positive way. Yeah. And so that to me, I think every morning when I wake up, I'm saying my prayers. I'm a lucky guy.
That's wonderful.
Sorry, I have a question for you. You mentioned very briefly, like maybe 20 minutes ago, about the power of listening. Talk to us about listening as a marketing practice and how you do that proactively with your team.
Well, this is an area where I had to do some work on myself. I wasn't a very good listener. And I think it's in part because I come from an Israeli culture where we tend to jump very quickly. And if you say something on the second word, I kind of know exactly what you want to say. And I jump in and I cut you off, and I'm going to start giving you the answer. But it really allowing for conversations, not having the biggest voice in the room, asking my leaders to do the same, of mostly asking a question and then closing your mouth and just listen and take notes and don't react. Don't react in the middle. Just let that person finish their train of thought as much as you would like to respond. You know, it came to me, Jen, I noticed something. I was in a coffee shop out of all places, and there were 5 guys sitting at a round table. And I was sitting at a different table just watching them, and they were speaking Spanish, which I don't understand, but the way they did things really inspired me. They had one person talking, and they talked for maybe 5 or 7 minutes. everybody around that table just stared at that person and nodded. And then there was a turn of another person to go and talk. And then the other 4 guys did the same thing. And it really inspired me. That happened about 12 or 13 years ago, but it inspired me and informed me that I need to do better. And that's the kind of culture that you really want. Just let people talk.
I always think of, I don't know if any of our guests or if you, Saar, ever heard StoryCorps as a project of National Public Radio, where they set up mobile recording studios and people would go into them wherever they were set up and just between 2 people share a story. And then there came, it's amazing, you should check it out. It went on for several years. And then they came out with this is dating me a little bit, a CD set, and I bought it for my husband, and the front cover said, "Listening is an act of love." And that really struck me. And I think that's really what people are conveying when they're deep listeners. And I try to always remember that when I rush ahead to fill in space or to insert my opinion. It's like to listen to somebody like those people were doing at the table is to really just love on them, to really give them, that need to be seen and heard.
You could tell they were truly interested. They were not distracted. Now, this was before the iPhone, before the constant distractions of the modern era. But still, it's something that I think should inspire some thinking on how can we replicate that, right?
Yeah, Jen leads what we call story labs. And there's something that every time, Jen, you talk about this, I actually do more research because it's so interesting to me. And that's this concept that we are designed, like biologically designed for something called neurocoupling. And that neurocoupling only happens basically through intimacy or story. So this is why understanding humanity is so important when it comes to marketing, because ultimately our job, in my opinion, as marketers is to invoke or evoke a feeling that includes love and trust. And that's that neurocoupling. So they've done brain scans where the same part of your brain that lights up when you see a puppy lights up when they see like Starbucks. Like it's the same part of the brain that runs on oxytocin more than the dopamine hit or the serotonin hit. And I just find all of that, like if we can master that in ourselves and with our teams, now we're really marketing, and marketing is a force for good. If we're encouraging people to love and trust, marketing is a force for good. It does not have to be used as a tool for propaganda.
For sure. I see a lot of marketeers coming in from a background of psychology, and you see a double major in psychology and some sort of a tech or math or computer science, more so than pure marketing degrees. I think you can teach marketing practices on the job, but to really understand people, you have to have that deep knowledge in people, which psychology tends to give you. So.
We have just a couple minutes left. So if you have any questions that have come to you as you're listening, now would be the time to go ahead and post them into chat.
Yeah, and while people are doing that, I just want to leave you guys with a recommendation. We talked about differentiation, how to sound different. There's a book I really like. It's called The Power of Moments. And it's really about the art and science of creating memorable experiences for people. And it's not requiring huge budgets or money. It just requires a little bit of a different thinking. And so I highly recommend that every marketeer should get this book, and you'd be surprised how things start changing when you start implementing some of those practices.
Wonderful, wonderful. The power of moments. Awesome. Well, thank you. I looked down at the clock and I'm like, dang, that was an hour already. And it's one of those things we could probably go on for a while. Do you have any closing comments or anything you want to express that we didn't get to, Saar?
No, just reinforcing, guys, any marketeers out there, guys, don't settle for the middle ground. Just go out there and take the time to plan and really do good by your stakeholders, by your company, by society. You are leading from the front. It's not the job of your CEO. Certainly is also the job of your CEO, but marketing professionals, that's our job. We should be out there carving the way for the rest of them. So
beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And to everybody who is attending, we will send out the recording of this conversation. And so if you want to go back through and take notes again, definitely do that. And we are hosting these monthly. So we have another one coming up in the beginning of July. And Justin, do you, at the topic of that, just
Yeah, it's the attention curation. It's how to nurture attention from your audience in a non-manipulative way. So, and then in August we'll have another CMO visit, guest to be determined. So thank you for being our first guest. Thanks for your friendship and support of us, and thanks for being someone that we can point to and say this is how you do it.
Anytime, guys. If you want to take me up on anything else, I'm happy to partake. So
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
thank you.
Bye.
bye everyone.